Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, while Bitcoin is still playing out this bullish divergence, the price is now running into major resistance on this chart and also this Bitcoin price chart that we need to pay attention to. So I'll be talking about that in just a moment, alongside the price of Solana also starting to reject from this significant area on the price chart, while the price of Chainlink is doing the same thing as well, rejecting from resistance. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before we take a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a quick look at the CPI inflation rate, because over the last one day, we actually got some new CPI inflation numbers, and believe it or not, the inflation rate actually dropped lower than what the market was expecting. But this did not necessarily pump markets in the short term over the last one day, which I'll talk about in just a moment why that may be. But at least as of right now, once again, the CPI inflation rate has dropped down to 2.4% year-over-year inflation in the CPI, and the expectations was 2.6%. And so technically speaking, that is some good news for the shorter term. Once again, lower than expected inflation, almost now back at the target rate, which, in case you're new to all of this, the target inflation rate from the Federal Reserve is 2%. But if we're taking a look at the Fed meeting probabilities for the upcoming Fed meeting, which, by the way, the next FOMC meeting or Fed meeting happens in a few weeks from now on the 7th of May, and we can see that at least as of right now, the market is expecting around a 72 to 73% chance of no change in interest rates. So no interest rate cuts or no interest rate hikes, and around a 27% chance approximately of a 25 basis point rate cut, so reducing interest rates by 0.25% at the next Fed meeting. And so once again, at least for now, it is currently more likely we will not see any rate cuts at the next Fed meeting on the 7th of May. And so if this drop that we saw over the last one day in the CPI inflation rate coming in lower than expectations, if that couldn't even perhaps warrant a rate cut at the next Fed meeting, then there's not much else that will likely cause a rate cut happening at the next Fed meeting. Now, we'll likely see a rate cut at some point in the future, maybe in a few months from now, but at this next Fed meeting, once again, at the moment, it is looking very likely that we will not see a rate cut based on the current information. And so that's potentially one of the reasons as to why we saw a bit of a short-term pullback despite seeing some good news with the CPI inflation number. And so that is the current situation for inflation and the upcoming Federal Reserve meeting. So getting straight into the price of Bitcoin on this 4-day time frame, and right now the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red on this chart right here. So nothing's changed over the last one day on this chart. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, obviously the weekly Bitcoin MACD has not really changed all that much over the last one day. And so technically speaking, as I've been saying for a while now on the channel, obviously it's still looking bearish ever since that bearish crossover that we saw around the end of January, early February. But more recently, over the last few weeks, basically we've slowed down the amount of bearish momentum that we're actually seeing. And so at least for now, based on this indicator alone, this is telling us we're potentially at a similar stage in the current price of Bitcoin compared to what we saw back around here. So I'm talking around July 2024, for example, at least based on this indicator right here. But if we're zooming out to this weekly Bitcoin chart, obviously we still have a massive bearish divergence, which is technically still active on the price of Bitcoin here. So technically this is telling us we should not expect a massive amount of bullish momentum towards the upside anytime soon. And once again, I've been saying that for months now on the channel since pretty much the beginning of this year. Now, of course, we can see short-term bullish price action here and there, short-term bullish reliefs, bounces from support and things like that on smaller time frames, just not necessarily massive momentum towards the upside, at least anytime soon. And if we're taking a look at this 3-day Bitcoin chart, obviously right now the price of Bitcoin is basically just bouncing around sideways between major support and major resistance. So first of all, we have significant resistance in between around 86,000 to 88,000. And if we were to actually confirm a candle close, confirm a breakout above 88,000, in that situation would likely find a decent amount of resistance at close to 92,000. and also at around 96,000. And as for support, based on these 3-day candle closes, we do have a decent amount of support at roughly 78.5k, so around 78 to 79,000 as a support level. But we also have significant support down here in between around 70,000 to 74,000. So obviously that significant support is starting at close to 74,000, which is pretty much exactly where we recently bounced from. And if we're taking a look at this daily Bitcoin chart, obviously we still have this descending line of resistance, which is still acting as strong resistance for the price of Bitcoin. And currently this is sitting at close to 84,000 and is now starting to dip below 84,000 as another point of resistance to watch out for. And if we're taking a look at this daily Bitcoin chart, looking at the Fibonacci retracement tool from this previous swing low at roughly 52 to 53,000 up towards the all-time high, we can see first of all the 50% retracement level sitting at around 75,000 give or take, acting as support, and we have this previous 38.2% Fibonacci level of support now acting as resistance in the short term, and that's sitting at around 82,500. And so those are some important support and resistance levels to pay attention to, at least in the short term for the price of Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at this daily Bitcoin chart, obviously right now we still have this bullish divergence, which is technically now confirmed. Obviously I talked about in my last video here on the channel that it's looking very likely we're going to confirm this bullish divergence, considering that bounce that we saw just yesterday. And obviously that basically confirmed a massive bounce here in the RSI, actually cementing the higher low in place in the RSI on the daily Bitcoin chart, which obviously now confirms the bullish divergence. And so technically speaking, based on this being a confirmed bullish divergence, this means we're most likely going to see either a bit of choppy sideways price action over the next couple of weeks, give or take, or maybe a continued slight bullish relief within the next couple of weeks. Because usually a bullish divergence on the daily time frame plays out over roughly a couple of weeks, give or take, sometimes only a week, sometimes multiple weeks, closer towards a month, but usually around 2 weeks, give or take, is what we see from a bullish divergence on the daily time frame. So that's what I'm expecting just in the somewhat shorter term here for the price of Bitcoin, just basically a bit of a break or a relief from all of the bearish price action, but not necessarily expecting a massive amount of momentum towards the upside. And if you want to actually trade these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, personally, I'm taking a lot of my crypto trades over on 2bit, so I'll make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive trading bonuses, like for example, up to $50,000 in a trading bonus just by using that link below this video to make your account and start trading on that account. But if you're not one of these larger traders here, you can also get a $30 sign up bonus using the link below this video, and also a 20% deposit rebate up to a max of 200 USDT. So if you deposit $1,000, you get a $200 bonus, but only if you use that link. And on top of all of that, if you simply use the link below this video to 2bit, you're automatically upgraded to VIP level 1 trading fees, which basically means you get a massive discount on trading fees. You get lowered trading fees over on 2bit, but remember, only if you use the link below this video. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, that first or second link below this video. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want 2bit as an exchange, there's also BTNex as another exchange out there that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to BTNex below this video as well. And also, in case you're wondering, if you use the link below this video to BTNex, you can claim an exclusive 10% discount on all trading fees on BTNex forever. That's a lifetime discount on your BTNex account, but once again, only if you use that link. And in case you're wondering, BTNex is also a no KYC exchange as well. But with that being said, taking a look at the shorter term Bitcoin price charts here on the 4-hour time frame, obviously over the last 1 day, over the last 1 to 2 days, we first of all started to play out this double bottom pattern, a W pattern with a breakout above that $80,000 neckline. And then once we confirmed that breakout, obviously we came for another test of this previous line of support to actually flip it into new support again. But then we began failing that retest, and basically the moment we failed the retest and started breaking back below this level right here, which was an important level on the price chart, sitting at around 81.6k, the moment that level failed, obviously we ultimately failed the W pattern. And so we did get pretty close towards towards the price target, but obviously we didn't hit the complete price target for the W pattern. And now, technically speaking, now that we've broken back below the neckline, below $80,000, that means that this pattern is now completely invalid. And so I now expect a bit of short-term resistance around these levels again, considering the current price is below these levels again. So once again, around $81,500 to $81.6K, and also at roughly $80,000, we could likely find some short-term resistance around those levels. But ultimately, once again, we still have this bullish divergence, which is technically active on the daily time frame. So once again, I expect that here in the somewhat shorter term, but due to the larger bearish divergence on the weekly time frame, don't expect massive bullish momentum, maybe just a slight short-term relief. And obviously, we cannot ignore these other points of support and resistance where the price can also struggle at and bounce from. And if we're taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map right now, honestly, we don't have a significant amount of liquidity in the somewhat shorter term. First of all, we have a small amount of liquidity at roughly 74,000 and just above 74,000. And we also have a decent amount of liquidity starting to build at roughly 85,000 and also at around 89,000. And so those are the levels to watch out for based on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. But other than that, there's not much else to say here for Bitcoin. So getting straight into Ethereum on the weekly time frame. And technically speaking, Ethereum is simply still within the larger bear market, as I've been saying for a long time now on the channel. Basically, the moment we broke below this multi-year bull market support line, which was sitting at above 2.6K, closer towards around 2.7K, the moment we broke that level right there, that was basically game over for the bull market. That's when really the bear market technically confirmed, as I said back then on the channel. But obviously, just recently, we have run into significant support right here, sitting in between around 1.4K to 1550. So at least for now, we are currently finding some support around there. But remember, even if we see a short-term bounce or a short-term relief, basically a bit of a short-term break from all of the bearish price action, that does not necessarily mean the bear market is over. Obviously, I said that right here when we saw that one green candle on the weekly chart right here. Obviously, we did see a slight little bullish relief, a slight bounce in the short term, but that was not the end of the larger bearish trend. And so just be aware of that. Yes, we will likely find a decent amount of support around here for some time, just in the short term, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, once again, just the somewhat shorter term. But ultimately, we're technically still within the bear market. So if we ultimately break below around 1.4K, obviously would likely drop down towards these next major points of support. I'm talking about potentially around 1.1K. And so honestly, I'll not be surprised if maybe in a few months from now, the price of ETH is trading at closer towards $1,000 to 1.1K if 1.4K obviously breaks. And other than that, there's not much else here to add for Ethereum. So getting straight into the price of Solana on the weekly time frame. And obviously over the last one day, we saw a perfect rejection, at least so far, from this area of previous support now acting as new resistance, and that's sitting in between 120 to 130. And obviously I mentioned in recent videos here on the channel, and especially my last video when we were actually testing that area, I said expect a very high chance, a high probability that we will reject from this area, considering how significant this area was previously for support. And usually significant support becomes significant resistance once we break that area, and that's exactly what we're currently seeing. And so once again, if we see another short-term bounce up towards around 120 to 130, expect a lot of resistance around there. We could likely reject from that area, once again, as I said before this rejection. And if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, technically speaking, we now have a confirmed bullish divergence for the daily Solana price chart. And so just like I said for the Bitcoin chart, obviously this means we're likely going to see either a slight bullish relief or maybe just some choppy sideways price action. And I explained in my last video, choppy sideways price action might be a more likely outcome considering this significant resistance. So basically the price tries to play out the bullish divergence and then struggles around resistance, sees some rejections and things like that, and plays out a bit of choppy sideways price action once again as the bullish divergence is trying to play out while the price is running into significant resistance. And so that is what I'm expecting in the shorter term in the coming days or potentially weeks for the price of Solana. And of course, in the longer term here, technically technically speaking, we still have that price target sitting at around $90, which is technically still in play. It's just for now, once again, in the short term, we're likely going to see a bit of a break from all of the bearish price action while the price is playing out this daily bullish divergence. But with that being said, taking a look at the price of XRP on the 3-day time frame, and technically speaking, this massive bearish divergence is still in play on this XRP chart, as I've been saying for many months now on the channel, since much higher prices. So while this is still playing out, of course, we are currently within a bearish trend, which is clearly shown by this descending parallel channel here on the 12-hour XRP chart. But of course, recently we have seen a decent bounce from this descending line of support, which is sitting at around $1.74 to $1.75. So continue to expect support around there if we actually pull back down towards there once again. And as for resistance, I would expect a lot of resistance at around $2.14 to $2.15, and above that, more resistance at $2.47 and $2.55, and major resistance at around $2.65 approximately, based on this descending line of resistance. But ultimately, once again, like I've said recently here on the channel, yes, we could see short-term bounces, short-term reliefs here and there, but technically speaking, we are currently within a larger bearish trend. So just keep that in mind. Even though we're seeing a bit of bullish price action in the shorter term, that does not necessarily mean we've reversed out of the bearish trend. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, it's a very similar story for Chainlink. Obviously, we're now starting to play out a new bullish divergence, which is technically now confirmed on the daily Chainlink chart. So expect either a slight bullish relief or maybe just some choppy sideways price action. But while the bullish divergence is starting to play out, obviously we are running into this important Fibonacci level based on previous Fibonacci level of support, now acting as new resistance, and that's sitting at around 1270 to 1280. And if we're looking at where the price rejected from, it's pretty much exactly $12.80. And so obviously the price of Chainlink is still very nicely respecting these technical levels on the price chart. So once again, continue to expect a lot of resistance at roughly 1280, give or take. And if we can actually see a confirmed breakout with at least a daily candle close confirming above 1280, but ideally back above $13, in that situation, we may end up seeing a continued relief closer towards around $15, but then around $14.90 to $15.50, expect a lot of resistance around there as well. And so honestly, I'd not be surprised if the price of Chainlink plays out a bit of choppy sideways price action in the imminent short term here, as the price is trying to play out the bullish divergence, but also running into significant resistance, which at least for now is preventing the price from going higher. And remember, despite seeing short-term bounces and short-term bullish reliefs, technically speaking, the larger trend is simply still bearish. At least for now, we're still forming lower highs and lower lows. We've broken below many important points of support and rejected from points of resistance, and really we have not reversed that trend for months. So technically speaking, once again, despite seeing these short-term bullish reliefs, we are still looking bearish when it comes to the larger trend. But if you want to actually trade these moves in the price of any crypto, once again, check out those links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto, no matter if the price is bullish, bearish, or chopping around sideways, you can profit from all of that price action by watching these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.